In a time and place when you can work from anywhere.
Two ladies in their mid to late 27s have decided to.
And they're calling it workcationing.
But as two gringos traveling the world, they're gonna need help.
That's where our fixers come in.
William is one of those fixers, and he did everything.
He found us iguana meat.
He translated with the locals.
He's the griftiest motherfucker we've ever met.
That free on grift was truly inspired.
This is the Workcationing Podcast.
We are here with William. William was one of our fixers in Puerto Rico, and we've got all kinds of interesting stories about that. But he's also one of my, William, I would call you one of my fixers back in New Hampshire, too. Do you think that that's a fair statement?
I'm sorry, who back in New Hampshire?
One of my fixers.
A fixer.
A fixer.
Interesting. I like that for a title.
Okay. Yeah, you were definitely one of our fixers in Puerto Rico. Did we not tell you that?
No. I didn't hear about this, but I dig that. That's what I would put on a business card.
Yeah, no, it was great because you made all kinds of things happen for us when we were in Puerto Rico. And you also make all kinds of things happen for me in New Hampshire, too. So, for example, when I needed to move all of my stuff into a 10 by 10 storage facility, William and Alex were the first two people I called. And they helped me rent the truck and load all of my stuff. And just in general, you're always there with a hookup, William, I have to say.
Fun times. When we were looking at listening to the book Outliers, Alex and I in Puerto Rico, and he has a section on connectors and their place in the market. It was pretty interesting.
Are there any key takeaways from that you want to share?
I was really talking about trends and how they catch on, and it was really about certain people who have there are key people that just seem to be make connections wherever they go, and they're deep in lots of different communities, and they bring people together. A lot of things happen because of them. A lot of really cool trends and technology have happened. When you get into the story, many times you'll find one of these people who, made the introductions.
Do you think that you're one of these people? I can see you being one of these people.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Kind of not to the degree of the folks that he's talking about. He kind of went off on in the type of person who there's the type of person who impulse buys, and then there's the type of person who researches what's the best deal. The consumer guys, these are the kind of guys that write into the consumer magazines to tell them that they're wrong.
Okay.
So I'm not that. But sure, definitely some qualities. I like people generally, and
well, William, one of my favorite things about you is your griftiness, and I want to take this word back. Kelly and I have been using the word grift a lot, and the dictionary definition of grift. See, what I don't like about this definition, and I've looked up 15 different definitions, but it always has some sort of swindle to it. So the first result is engage in petty or small-scale swindling. But I feel like grifts can be large and they can be small, and they don't necessarily have to be taking advantage of somebody, at least in the way that Kelly and I define the word grift. And by that definition, by our definition, William, you are just the griftiest motherfucker I think I've ever met, and I really mean that in a compliment, as a compliment.
As long as it's not conflated with graft. Because graft is definitely bad. And in fact, I wonder if the words are related etymologically. But hustle seems to be have a bad connotation amongst some people, and that's one I've always appreciated, the word hustle.
Okay, well, graft. The definition of graft is bribery and other corrupt practices used to secure illicit advantages or gains in politics or business. So I see grift is better than graft. I'll give you that. But if you're grafting, you've got some influence, and I kind of respect that hustle in a way. So, but the grift that I really want to talk about, and that Kelly and I are really excited to talk about, is the iguana grift, because you told us about iguana meat when we were in Puerto Rico, and you were like, this is a delicacy They're trying to solve their iguana meat problem or their iguana problem because the iguanas in Puerto Rico are destroying the roads. They're causing car accidents. They're just creating a lot of they're definitely scaring the tourists. I will for sure give them that. And so there are more iguanas on the island of Puerto Rico than there are people. We've got a huge iguana problem. They have no natural predators. They're not supposed to be there in the first place. These female iguanas lay 98 eggs a year. 90 of them hatch into baby iguanas that grow up to be 6 feet tall. They're just really horrifying dinosaurs. And William, you told me that people eat these things.
Well, it's interesting because I never thought that they got that big. Like, that was a revelation to me. And for some reason, I had into my head that they were meat eaters, which is why it never would have occurred to me that they could get that big, right? Like lizards eat insects. I just thought they were slightly larger, right? That's maybe they were scavengers, but I figured they mostly ate insects and therefore wouldn't get that big. But it turns out they're vegetarian, and they get huge. And it's crazy to see something that big just hanging up in a tree, sitting on a tree branch. It doesn't make you feel comfortable walking underneath it.
No.
But
no, and they run real fast, and they swim real fast too.
And they swim with their tail like alligators, right? Like it's got that motion.
Nightmare.
Yeah, it's really horrifying.
And it was actually our neighbor Mia that told me that people eat them and that it was considered a delicacy. So I started looking into it and found out about what you said with the overbreeding of them, and it's taking a toll on some of the crops there. And apparently they've formed these squads that just go around and kill them just to save the crops. And it seemed like a waste. And so some people started this campaign to get people to eat them. And when I talked to you, that's kind of where I was, just finding out that it exists. But I feel like now, having looked more into it, that I don't think that the native population is ever going to adopt. I won't say ever. They don't appear quick to adopt it as a food source, even though it's readily available. I had a difficult time actually locating it for sale, either raw or cooked. And it appears, to the extent that it will catch on, depends on how well they can sell it to tourists. As like you go to Phoenix, you buy rattlesnake. You go to Australia, you order kangaroo. But people don't come in and order a family meal of kangaroo, and they're not going to order a family meal of iguana. They order their regular food and then an order of that on the side so everybody can eat 2 bites and say that they've eaten iguana.
Well, when we were in Aguada, we were hell-bent on getting some iguana meat to try, and we were going to try it 3 separate ways. We were going to do it sautéed, we were going to do it baked, and we were going to deep fry some iguana nuggets and really try it in all of the different preparations that one might want to eat iguana meat. William, you sourced this iguana meat. It was $18 a pound. It was all the way on the other side of the island, though, and that guy was butchering his own iguanas, correct? Because he sent me photos. He texted me photos of him butchering iguanas. So this was like homegrown iguana meat? Yes.
And I didn't get to meet the guy. He seemed really interesting. He sent me you sent me the text of him with the lobster. He was diving that day, picking up lobster off the bottom of the ocean. And I mean, the abundance there really blew my mind. I don't know why I didn't notice it on previous visits, and I can't say that I've noticed it in all tropical places, but there were so many species of plant and animal life that were edible, and not just edible but delicious, that it just seems like you could eat really well for free there for a long time.
Would you have killed, so we stayed in different places when we were in Puerto Rico. Would you offered to hunt and kill and skin our own? I didn't want that. I felt more comfortable having it prepackaged. I don't know why that's the case, but Kelly, I think you were in the same boat, right?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know why that changes anything for me. That's probably a I think that there's definitely a lot of illusion that you get just from having something packaged, kind of like put some distance between you and your food. And that's something I try not to think about too much, because I think about it too much. I think my whole dietary ethics kind of falls apart pretty quickly.
Well, I mean, when you go to the iguana meat guy, he will package it for you, and it even has a nutrition label on it. So it's 120 calories per serving of iguana meat. What's extra fucking horrifying about it, though, is that it's red meat. Who would have seen that one coming? Like, quick poll. Kelly and William, did you know that did you expect it to be red meat? Or did you think it was going to be white?
No, I would have expected it to be white.
Yeah, because I've eaten alligator before, and that was definitely not a red meat.
Yeah, I was expecting it to be like alligator too, but then alligator eat meat. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I don't know.
I mean, cows don't eat meat, but I think maybe what solidified that image in my mind, and maybe yours too, as far as white meat goes, is that they jokingly call it, because they perch and roost in the trees, they call it the chicken of the tree, gallina de palo, and so I think maybe that contributed to the white meat illusion.
Oh, sorry. Can you say that again in Espanol? ¿Cómo se dice?
Gallina de palo. And interestingly, the Spanish is I guess when it's dead, they refer to it as pollo, but when it's alive, they tend to refer to it as a rooster or a hen instead of
I didn't know that.
instead of chicken. So it's gallino is like a rooster, like a female rooster, gallo. I don't know. It was odd to me that they used a different name for it, and they used a different name for tree too, palo, instead of arbol, arbol, which is what you use in Mexico. So.
Well, I guess we have like cow, and then we call it beef when it's dead. So I guess we have a little bit of that, not with chicken, but we do it with other animals.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, fortunately, we weren't able to get this iguana meat, but that doesn't mean that we didn't have iguana adventures. We were not able to get the iguana meat because on the day that we were going to pick it up, the iguana meat man was just having a killer day out at sea, picking up all kinds of lobsters. And so it was more beneficial for him to stay out there catching these lobsters than it was to meet up with us to sell us, $9 worth of iguana meat. Because I wasn't going to get a whole pound if I didn't have to. I didn't need a whole pound. Kelly and I were not going to eat the whole pound. It comes bone in. That was very off-putting. It comes kind of shrink
wrapped. And to be clear,
Right. And when we say that this guy was catching lobsters, we mean he was free diving off of a wooden boat into the water to catch giant lobsters. So this guy, he's got a good grift all around, I feel like.
He's working that meat grift. And William, you were trying to get on that too, because you found out that in order for them to really sell the iguana meat, it needs to be butchered in an FDA approved facility, right?
Correct, which means it's probably not really legal for him to sell you that, because I doubt that his kitchen is an FDA approved butchering center or what have you. Not that it matters, right? It's like it's the commerce part. What the real issue there is not safety, it's control. And if you're conducting commerce and they don't know about it, then they can't tax you on it. They can't regulate it. And of course, the regulations are just a different kind of tax. I mean, you can go to your local park and give someone potato salad, but if you charge them $1 for the potato salad, all of a sudden your kitchen is unsafe. Well, your kitchen was no more or less safe when you were giving the potato salad for free, but because you exchanged $1 for it, now it's a commercial procedure, and you have to abide by all of this nonsense.
Well, I didn't tell you this, but I had sent out a Facebook message to the best iguana meat Puerto Rico company, which I thought was our iguana meat guy. Au contraire, iguana meat guy has competition with best iguana meat Puerto Rico company. And they are an FDA approved facility, and they were going to sell it to me for $8 a pound. So it was half the price and all of the FDA approval. And they also shrink wrapped and food labeled their packages. And it was no less horrifying than the other iguana meat guy, because I mean, iguana is just not a good looking meat. I don't think that there's a way. Are there iguana fillets?
I don't feel like the way the skeleton is that you're going to get much of a fillet, that it's going to be kind of like a rib where, I mean, you're either going to cook it
eat
till it
around the
falls off the bone. Yeah.
Oh, God. Kelly, aren't you so happy we didn't have to do this?
I really felt like I dodged a bullet on this one, I got to tell you.
Well, so the whole point of the FDA approval thing was that, William, you and I were talking about it, and you were going to catch some of the live iguanas and then transport them to the FDA approved butchery center and make some bank on the iguana meat, correct?
Well, so the thing is, you have to have the FDA approval if you're going to export them, or if you're going to import them into the United States, which this place that you're talking about, the approved facility, I didn't get a hold of them. In fact, if you could send me their information, I'd appreciate it. So I never really got past the initial research phase. The one company that I did get a hold of, it took them a long time to get back to me, and the guy was like, well, are you trying to buy it or sell it? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe both. I'm just trying to get information. And I asked him another question, and he would answer it, and I go, are you trying to buy it or sell it? And after the third time, I was like,
I'm trying to make money on iguana meat. What part of this don't you understand, dude?
Right. So I'm just trying to figure out the business and how it works. So they import it, I guess, to New York, where they're also trying to market it as a delicacy, and we'll see if it catches on. But in order for them to do that, it has to be an approved facility, and part of being in an approved facility means that they have to butcher it on site, so the iguana must be live. And so there must be a market. They're not going to raise them, right? That wouldn't make sense. So they have to capture them, which means someone is running a business capturing these guys live and transporting them to the facility. And I thought that would be interesting.
Yeah, and you thought that guy could be you.
Yeah, I have no idea how. Well,
you had a rental car, and I just had visions of you and Alex chasing these 6-foot speedy ass iguanas around with gunny sacks, and then Kelly and I were going to have to be there just to witness because I think that would be a scene that I would just never forget, and I would be thoroughly entertained, and I'm sure I would be doubled over cackling. But I mean, the thought of you catching an iguana, shoving it into a gunny sack, and then it sits on Alex's lap, because you can't leave that in the hot trunk of a car. They're going to be dead by the time you get there.
I have no idea about the safe transport of iguanas, but apparently, I mean, they will bite you. They're not aggressive, but if you're grabbing it, it'll bite you, and they have those huge tails, and they will whack you with them too. So while you're trying to grab this thing, I don't know how to do it. This is the one thing where we were staying. The dog caught 3 of them while we were there, and I got some good pictures of him with one in his mouth. And it wasn't dead. He was just holding it, behind the head, the neck, holding it by the back of the neck. And I tried to get it away from the dog, and he was not giving it up. And he did later kill it and eat it. And apparently it's his thing. And I was thinking the best way to capture
This is a tiny little wiener dog, by the way. This is not like a German Shepherd. This is not a Mastiff. This is a wiener dog that caught a 6-foot-long iguana that definitely weighed more than that dog did. And it ate it?
I don't think it wasn't that big. It wasn't that big. But I think length, it was bigger than the dog, yeah. It wasn't as, I don't know about how stocky it was. Anyway, it did eat it. And so I was thinking the best way to catch these things would be to train a dog to catch them and bring them to you. And that was the best idea I could come up with. And obviously that's more of a project than I had time to get into. I have no idea if that would be profitable in the end. But we did go with our neighbor out on a boat, much like the iguana guy. It was a small wooden boat, and we went to a particular area, and we didn't pick up any lobster, but we did pick up octopus and conch, and we got 6 pounds of octopus and 12 pounds of conch, I'd say, in maybe half hour, 40 minutes, less than 40 minutes of us diving down and picking them up off the bottom of the ocean. And we went home.
Did you sell it or did you eat it?
I wanted to sell him, and what we ended up doing, I wanted to sell some of it just to experience the process, right? Because people say things, oh, you can sell this for this, right? Like, okay, let's do it. I want to hand the man an octopus that I picked up off the bottom of the ocean, and I want him to put cash in my other hand. So to experience this transaction. But that didn't happen. We ended up turning all of it into a huge seafood salad, which was fantastic. And then I planned to do that the next trip, and we never went back out. The boat had problems, the engine. Life happened, and I never got back out. So that's still on my list of things to do.
What is your favorite grift that you've ever run? I know that you were unsuccessful as an iguana catcher and seller. I understand that you were somewhat successful with your conch and an octopus capture and potential sale, but you didn't quite close that deal yet. What has been your favorite grift that has either actually come to fruition to completion or not that you've ever run or thought of? Because the iguana stuff's solid gold, I think. That's just some weird shit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't, and they still have potential, but I didn't have the time to follow through. But I like thinking about and planning things like that, even if they don't, because you never know, next time I'm back there, I've got a jump start on it, and it could happen next time. Favorite one, when we would go down to Mexico, I was in my early 20s, so like 20 years ago, and the patents on, this was my understanding of the situation, they had outlawed Freon, and that, I don't know if this is relative to the story, but I feel compelled to tell it, that the Freon, the company that produced them had lost their lock on the market, and everybody was going to start producing Freon, and it was going to be dirt cheap. So they sent some lobbyists to get Freon outlawed because they had this other product, R14. They had some other new coolant, and they wanted to control the market. So they ended up, through legislation, getting Freon off the market. So everyone had to come to them for the source of this new refrigerant that everybody was, again, forced by statute to use. And that all happened under the guise of environmental concerns. So anyways, I was in Phoenix, and of course, everybody had Freon systems, and the legislation passed, all the new cars had the new refrigerant, but the used cars, when your coolant needed to be recharged, they couldn't get it. There was a limited supply, okay? They had to stop manufacturing it. They could sell everything they had left, but they had to stop manufacturing it. So as the supply dwindled, the demand went up and the price went up. Well, it turned out we would go to Mexico all the time, and they had cans of Freon there, and you can just put the new coolant in your old system. There was a charge that they had to do to retrofit your system to be able to accept the new coolant. So needless to say, if you were poor in Phoenix and you needed new coolant, not only was the new coolant more expensive, but you had to get your system redone, and that was more expensive. So there's a huge demand for Freon. And we used to just drive back across the border with a trunk full of Freon. Like, the border didn't seem to care. I don't think they knew. They weren't really aware of the situation. Nobody else was doing it. So every time we would go down, we would just bring back Freon and Cuban cigars. And so that always paid for my trips to Mexico. I could always come back with more than enough to pay for my trip. So I felt like I could take a free trip to Mexico whenever I wanted. That was cool.
Okay. Well, we should wrap this up, right?
Wrap,
Kelly?
Yep, I think we're good. I think we got it.
All right. Thank you, William, so much for being on our podcast. I really appreciate it. And thank you for everything that you did for us in Puerto Rico. We had an absolute blast with you. I will never forget jumping off of the pier at Crash Boat Beach into that water with you. We had such a great time. And Kelly even jumped off of that pier. I didn't think she was going to do it for a minute there, but you did.
Oh, look at me go. It was a great time.
All right, so we're gonna pick bigger things to jump off of in the future.
Yes.
Yeah, but we're gonna have a hard time topping that bio bay, wouldn't you say?
That was pretty amazing. But it's out there. I know it is.
Okay, well, we'll find it. Kelly and I are going to chase it. If we find it, we'll bring it to you.
Perfect.
All right. Thanks, William.
Thanks,
Adios.
William.
Bye.
Bye.
This has been another episode of the Workationing Podcast. If you like what you heard here, make sure to like, rate, subscribe, and leave us a review on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, or wherever else on the internet you're hearing this.
You can also go to workationing.com. That's workationing.com.
But really, though, like, he really just saw food. He saw food just everywhere.
You just have to catch it.
You just have to catch it. He said you could eat here for a really long time for free. I was like, sir, you could. You could do that. I'm going to Sizzler.
You catch me a Sizzler.
Catch me a Sizzler. How about that?